Hey everybody, welcome to Olympic Minds, Leadership Beyond Limits. This is a podcast for the leaders of leaders, the visionary of visionaries, for those people who want to move beyond success into significance, for those individuals who are not interested in mediocrity but mastery. This is for people who don't want to live in theory, but they want to live in scenarios that are grit-tested, heart-proven, and results-driven. And so, hey, I'm Sherry Wynn, two-time Olympian, national championship basketball coach, CEO of the Winning Leadership Company, and author of 5 leadership books. So today we're going to talk to Bill Thompson, and I was introduced to Bill Thompson a few years ago. I interviewed him for one of my books, I think Winning Business Secrets. We had a wonderful conversation. I was really impressed by not only his knowledge, but his authenticity and his love for leadership. One of the things that he just told me about, he's been a COO for many companies, right? And he just got off back-to-back, imagine this folks, back-to-back 100-day plans where he says, like, it's really high pressure and I loved it. So we got to talk about the high pressure and I loved it kind of scenario when you're doing 100-day plans and you love it because you know the work and the time and the effort it takes to put into that. But I'm going to let Bill introduce himself because I think when we talk to people, it's so much better to hear from their own words what they think is the most essential thing about them. So Bill, take it away.
Well, Sherry, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I really do appreciate it. And I always get so much out of our time together. So it's my pleasure to join you today. You know, listen, I'm an operations executive. I specialize in leading transformations. I drive enterprise value. And really at my core, if I dial it back to, okay, what am I centrally? I'm an analyst, right? I break down complexity down into clarity and structure. I align teams that can execute with discipline under pressure. You know, as I look back, I mean, over the last 2 decades, I've led organizations through major integrations, M&A events, large-scale operating model shifts. And what I'm really, really passionate about is helping teams find conviction in uncertain moments, like turning strategy into action, building systems and cultures that last well beyond any single leader. So that's where I really get my energy from, Sherry.
So I want to turn it back for just a minute because you talked about, we were visiting before we got on and you were like, 2 100-day plans and literally almost back to back. Like you got one rolling, you executed it, and then the company was sold, and so you jumped into another one. And you said, one of the things that was amazing to me is you said, I love the pressure. So how do you teach yourself or how do you train people to love the pressure? Because a lot of people fold under pressure.
When I look back, at my career, I've always, and I can't explain why, but I've always thrived in the moments that are the most critical. And so what I really focus on as a leader is making sure that, I believe fundamentally that only the hard decisions matter, because if they were easy, someone else would have already made the decision already. I focus on the core tenet of those empowered, and this is deeply rooted for me, because I've seen it from meeting rooms, boardrooms, etc. Those who are empowered to decide have an obligation to make a decision, and I would be happy to break these out in a more detail in what I mean when I say these things. But really, at the end of the day, the most important thing that I do is provide clarity. So there could be this universe of things that are happening, right? What I really focus on is how can I deconstruct things in a way that allows me to kind of get past the complexity, get things down to modular components, and be able to then reassemble them in ways that create value, create clarity, create structure, create alignment, etc. And so there's not a playbook, there's not a recipe, but there is a rhyme behind all of these. And how do you take all this noise and really bring it together in ways that create organizational clarity? So what I love about high stakes and high pressure is because that's the time where most people need clarity and they need leadership. And that's where I just, for me, I've never been a person like, if you had a room of people and you're like, okay, if you want to lead this activity, raise your hand. No, thanks. I'm not sitting back saying me, pick me. I lead when there is a need to lead. And so these moments of pressure, there's a need. And so that's where I perform at my best.
I love that idea that you like to take things and make it like really complex things and make it more simple. Because
Yeah.
when I was a basketball coach, I wanted to show people how smart I was early, right? Like that was when your early career. And I was lucky I had the men's basketball coach came over and he goes, I want to teach you something. And I go, okay. He goes, kiss. I go, whoa, 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 bud. Like, what do you mean, like kiss? He goes, no, 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 no. He's like, keep it simple, stupid. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, look, you're making it too complex. You got to make everything simple enough for every player to get it. And so I was like, wow. And he goes, no, he says, it's not how smart you are. It's how smart you can make them think they are, right? And so when you talked about taking, something really complex and you break it down into simple things that everybody can get and create the clarity, because once it's clear, people can move forward.
Fully agree. Exactly. Right. As a core philosophy here, like being able to communicate things, because it can be really complicated, and that's great. There's lots of things in life that are complicated, and being able to explain something complicated in complicated terms is not all that valuable. But being able to explain it in a way that's simple and easy to understand and grasp and actionable, now there's a little bit of magic to that, right? So similar to you, when I first started in my career, I started as a network engineer. So as a career, I was supposed to be like the smartest guy in the room, like you're a subject matter expert. You have to know everything. And it's kind of a thing that you have to, as any SME is, right? Like that is your value, is your knowledge and your ability to make things happen technically. So I always focused to be the smartest guy in the room, and I would read all the technical books, and I wanted to be the subject matter expert that the other technical people came to. And I always thought that was my passion. I thought that solving technical problems, so I was like, I don't know, 25, something like that. I'm like, oh, I've already figured out what I'm going to do my whole career. So I'd love to do these. I love to solve technical problems. And because what I loved about it is the actual troubleshooting part about it, right? Designing systems. I mean, I used to do some really fun things. I would design backbone networks. I would fly across the world and I would install the equipment. And it was a lot of fun to do in your mid-20s. And I thought that solving those problems was what I loved because of that, how you compartmentalize and how you take a very complex system, kind of what we're describing in leadership, take a complex system and you chunk it down. Okay, well, what does it work from here to here, from here to here? And you're just dissecting it and looking at things differently from a lot of different perspectives. And so what I discovered was that actually solving technical problems wasn't my passion. It was directionally close to my passion, but it wasn't my passion. What actually I love to do is to solve business problems. And I had a little taste of business strategy, and I was like, oh, like this is great. Like you just get to do so much bigger things, and being able to shape a company in a strategy, and how do you connect value with customers, and how do you optimize systems and improve margin, and all these things all became problems to solve for me. And it opened my mind to, holy cow, there is so much more that I can solve by being an analyst and being insatiably curious. And I would have never guessed, like if we were to talk to like high school me, I would have never been like, I'm good at anything in particular. What I've learned through my life, though, is I'm incredibly curious, and my kids they've inherited this trait. And it's just something that I just never put my finger on. I had no idea, but I'm incredibly curious. And so I apply that to my work. And when I discovered that I could do that as a leader, and I was like, wow, this is actually what I'm supposed to do as a leader. It's great. I love it. So driving business strategy, demystifying the complex is what I love to do.
Right. I love the word curiosity. I think that curiosity implies like you're always going to be learning, right? There's nothing like there's always this new level of learning. It implies that you don't ever know it all, is that there's a new level. And what does that mean? And tell me more about that. And I really want to know what you do. I mean, it's this curiosity that drives innovation and drives that next level of what we're going to do next. If you're not curious, it means you're just following a pathway. Like, people are like, A, B, C, D. Okay, great. But why do we do that? And what would happen if we did this? And let's let's do some discovery. Let's have some curiosity around here. So how do you implement that with your team members? Like, how do you keep them in a curiosity mode?
Yeah, certainty is dangerous.
I love that word. Certainty is dangerous. I love it.
Because and it doesn't matter if you're highly intelligent or on a specific subject or not. If you're certain, then you're not listening, you're not asking questions. And I've met both of those people. I've met people that are highly intelligent and totally wrong, and I've met people that are marginally intelligent on a subject and accidentally right. Both are not what we want in business, right? What we need is people, and I think beyond just solving problems, like business integrity, and how do we get to an environment where people feel like they can perform at their best and grow and develop as people, right? But being in a position to where you shouldn't go into a conference room, a boardroom, it doesn't, into a meeting on Zoom. Like, you shouldn't go into that thinking you have all the answers. If you think that you have all the answers, and you might, congratulations, but that's not the point. The point is you need to get people aligned around the mission and the vision, and how are we going to get there? And you will get there so much better if you do something really simple, like, how about you ask a question? How about you look like you're interested in the feedback? And how about you give people the appearance that they have a seat at the table to shape the outcome? That's just if you give them the appearance. I'll tell you what, if you actually do it genuinely, you're going to unlock the potential of your people. You're going to be open to better ways of doing things. I've always had the philosophy, I say this openly. My team would tell you, I've said this to them probably this week, actually. Like, I don't have to be the guy that has the right answer. This is not a pride of authorship thing. I'm not employed to have the right answer. I'm employed to make sure that the right decision is made.
Right.
Doesn't have to be mine. And oftentimes it isn't. Sometimes it is. Great. Good for me. That doesn't matter. It means nothing. What matters is that the business wins, and that people grow, and that we're creating something bigger. Like, that matters.
Absolutely. I love it that you walk in, you don't have to be the one. You don't have to have the answer. You don't have to be right. I mean, all those things are really dangerous. They're dangerous because that's the separator between you and the value of your team members, right? That's
totally right.
We disempower. When I was a coach, and a young coach again, we make a lot of mistakes when we're young. I mean, thank goodness that we have the opportunity to recover and to keep growing from mistakes. But I always thought I had to know it all, and I had to be the one that did it all. And I didn't empower my assistant coaches. I didn't empower the team enough. But as I got older, and I'm working with 18 to 22-year-olds. So these are not. I mean, the older I got, the more I trusted them. So the age was bigger. And so let's say I'm now 45 and my players are 18, and I would say to them, what do you think? How would you defend this? What would you do against this team or against this player? And unbelievably, like, they would have great answers, and they're 18. I mean, they're 18 or 19 and they have great answers. Well, and then I would say let's try that. So not only listen to them, let's try that. And man, instead of being my team, it was our team. So total different sense of ownership, total different sense of wanting to do the right thing off the court. That was a big difference. Before, it was because it was my team, then they were like crazy off the court. I was always kind of pulling them in and trying to figure out, how do I discipline these people? Once it becomes they would use the word my team or our team, all of those outside things just faded away. The value of giving people value is, I think, one of the challenges that a lot of leaders have.
I think that is such an important point, Sherry. The reality is that there's this continuum of outcomes, right? There's this dimension of right answers, there's this wrong answers, and there's some middle of the road, murky, but they're okay answers, right? So when you give people the ability to make decisions, it may not be the exact answer that you would have done, but it's the answer that empowers them and does something even more importantly. They're now accountable for the outcome.
Right.
And they're like a co-creator of the vision. Like, you can't put a price on that. So again, that's a great point, right? When you can get folks to actually participate actively in making the determination about how do we go about getting from here to here, whether it's basketball, any sporting event or business, they can participate in shaping that. They're more likely to buy in. They're more likely to work harder at it, and you're getting their best, right? I was taught by a mentor at an early age that want to is exponentially more valuable than have to. And he always wanted to make sure like everyone, like have to is like, the way I've internalized this in my career is like, that's when I make a decision by edict. Like, this is me telling you that I have a title that's bigger than your title, and I get to tell you that this is what you're going to do. There's a time where that's theoretically needed. I don't pull that lever ever. I don't know that I've ever pulled that lever. It's all about, how do I ask the right questions with the right intent, with the right curiosity, give people the right respect so that we arrive at a conclusion. It's very seldomly I'm the one saying, okay, you do have to say, okay, this is the decision, but it's usually like we got there. Like it's so much easy, I guess. It's easier, but it takes effort. It's intentional. Like, you don't just ask random questions. You're shaping discussions in ways that I don't know that a lot of people think about.
That's the power of the question, right? The person who has the most control in the room, the most power in the room, is the person who asks the great question. But most people don't know that. They think the power in the room is the person who has all the answers, but really, the person who has the power to ask a great question, because the better question you ask, the better answer you're going to get, right? That's just the truth.
Right.
Most people don't study asking questions. They don't sit down to think, well, what's a really great question I can ask here? And they're looking for a statement they can make rather than a question they can make. But if you ask the right question, that creates or uncovers way more. I mean, just so much more than asking, like, make a statement. I mean, one of my favorite questions to ask is, what would great look like right now in this current situation you're talking about? Because when people come in whining and complaining, if you just turn around and say, well, okay, what would great, for you right here, right now look like? And they're almost like, what do you mean? No, I just want to know, like, what would if you could turn your attitude toward what that would look like, what would change? And man, that makes them think, right? So
Heck yeah, it does.
Yeah, they get off the whine and complain board and they start thinking about what's their PowerPoint.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I'll tell you, your comment on asking the right question, I couldn't agree with you more. And the reality is that is a very unintuitive motion for people. And it's not just that people aren't trained on the importance of asking the right question. It goes against everything in human conversation. People are bad listeners, and people are thinking about your answer. Like, how am I going to respond? And so it takes quite a bit of confidence in that you're not going to obsess about, what do I say next? You're actually intellectually invested in, I need to know what you think, and then I'll figure out what I think later. Which is why when you see really good leaders out there, what I've noticed is they don't mind pause and silence between one person and them answering. They're very comfortable with what most people are like, I need to answer because they've stopped and now I need to speak. And the answer is like, actually, they're gathering their thoughts because they were actually listening to you, and now they're going to speak. I'm just like, and I'm not saying I'm great at that. I've observed that, and it's like, that's part of the secret here is you've got to be comfortable with that silence because you're thinking, because you were listening.
Yeah, I think that great point about listening. And so I always ask people, what's the opposite of talking? And people go, listening. I go, no, it's waiting to talk. Because that's what we do. We're not really listening, we're waiting to talk. And I think there's, when you're talking about curiosity and you're talking about asking questions, behind all that for me is, for a person to do that, you have to have the utmost confidence in yourself. So how do you, and there's a lot of people in big positions, like, because I work with them, and they'll come in with all this self-doubt, all this like thing that they're like imposter syndrome. So how did you gather in this place of when I say like I always tell people, look, you cannot be humble if you're not confident. humility is aligned with confidence. The only way to get humble, and I really think the only way to listen, the only way to ask questions, is to this deep level of confidence. So what gave you the confidence to be the person who can have the curiosity, who can ask the questions, who can listen, and not be the center of attention? Where did you gain that confidence?
I think probably a lot of people listening to this identify with self-doubt and imposter syndrome. I've talked to so many leaders that you would be like, what are you talking about? And it boils down to they have such high expectations of themselves that they themselves struggle to reach, right? But anyone else doesn't see that as a gap. They just see them as effective. And when I look at my background, the thing that I anchor myself in is, over the course of my career, I've been a riser. I've rose to the level of the challenge, regardless of the challenge, even when I'm unsure and I don't know the next step necessarily. I know that I've been here before, and I know that I know how to get it accomplished, right? Because I don't necessarily have to have the answer, right? Like we were talking about a few minutes ago. It's not about, kind of what I would say to your comment just a minute ago, kind of the same kind of a statement. Like, the solution to uncertainty isn't certainty, it's curiosity. So it gets back to that curiosity piece. And I don't pretend to have the answers. I make the next steps clear so that momentum doesn't stall. And I just start asking a lot of questions. But for me, I just know over the course of my career, when the chips are down, like, I've come through. And I think people just need to have, once you can get to that, everything else, every other challenge, it's like, wow, that's a really steep hill. I've climbed steep hills before. That's a really big problem. I've solved problems before. You just got to remember. And I think most people lose sight of what they've done in their career. I know so many people that are like, I'm just so busy being busy. I don't even know what I accomplished today, this week. I couldn't even tell you what I've done. It's like, I think people just need to be more introspective and mindful and be like, I can maybe just internally, but like celebrate some wins and be like, yeah, you actually have a collection of a lot of really good accomplishments that other people don't. And so you should have a lot of confidence when you're looking forward to what comes next.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, it's funny to talk about that because, the people, I think you're exactly in the right place, is that we forget what we've accomplished or we minimalize it. Like, I was a minimalizer of, I can explain away anything that I ever accomplished. I would say like, well, you're a valedictorian of your college. And I go, yeah, but there wasn't that many people in my college. or you were All-American. Oh yeah, but when I went back to play and I got All-American status, I was older than most people. Or you were a two-time Olympian. Yeah, but I played a sport that wasn't really big in the United States. So so I was just so I could minimalize everything down, which kept me feeling less than, right? And so I'm not saying. It wasn't, and I wouldn't tell people I was an Olympian forever. I just wouldn't even mention that. I didn't want to even throw it out there. Because somehow I felt like if I said that, I was trying to prove to them how great I was. And really it was the opposite. Like, I didn't want to say it because I was so insecure about anything I'd accomplished that I just couldn't say it. And so it's learning I did those things and celebrate the wins. But it didn't make me better than you or anybody else in the world, right? It just said that along my path, I was able to achieve these things. And because I was able to achieve these things, I can achieve more things. But it doesn't make me better. It was so interesting to me to finally understand like how minimalizing my successes kept me in the throes of unworthiness, which meant that I couldn't get to the next level because I was always trying to talk down about myself. And when I'm coaching people, Bill, the amazing thing is that many people do the same thing. Like, I will ask them, well, tell me about yourself. Tell me what you've done. And they will go down this pathway of explaining to me how what they achieved wasn't that big a deal.
Yeah. I hope people are listening really closely when you say that, because that is really, rooted in some insight that so few people have. So I couldn't agree more, right? And I think everyone has their struggles, everyone has their wins, and we all struggle sometimes to have the right level of confidence that we need. And at the end of the day, people just need to not overthink it. Like, I mean, I remember I was, I don't know, early 30s. I had grown up as a technical leader, and because I could communicate at various levels, from technical minded folks all the way to executives, you know, a lot of people in the technical world aren't known for being good communicators. At least they weren't, a long time ago. So I stood apart. And so they're like, okay, well, this guy needs to manage people. So then I started as a team manager and a director, and it went on to a lot of great opportunities. But I remember feeling like the first time where I had a couple hundred people reporting to me, and someone, there was a couple people on my team that had better education than me. Like, and it was intimidating. Like, wow, like that's impressive. And it wasn't until much later that I would learn that really education just proves that you have the ability to learn. I'm not downing I'm not devaluing education at all, but it's a demonstration that you have the ability to learn
Right.
Various concepts. And I didn't learn this until after I decided to go get my MBA, because I was like, it felt like a missing piece. I'm like, so I have to do this. So it's going to be a glass ceiling. And it'd be interesting, like if you could go back and see, like, okay, did I accomplish more because I've had my MBA? I have no idea. I can tell you one thing, I've never once been asked about it. I don't lead with it. I have no idea. You know what I mean? It just doesn't, I don't think it matters. What people care about is accomplishment. They care about, what have you done? What have you solved? How do you get around complexity? How do you shape decision? How do you improve business, enterprise value? Other than that, they don't care. They really.
And that's exactly how many people I've seen that say, I need to go back and get this degree or that degree. And I'll say, why? Like, what, well, because I need it to move forward. I said, well, why, tell me more about why you needed to move forward. Well, that's just that's what you got to do. And I said, well, it's required. Well, I just, yes. I said, so everybody's asking you to do this. Well, no, but well, okay. So is it that you really want to learn that, or is it because you're afraid that people are going to look down upon you if you don't have it? But
or it gives them a reason to not go after that next big thing.
Oh,
I can tell you that's absolutely happens because it's comfortable. If I'm going to go after this thing, but if it doesn't work, then that's hard. That's heavy. That I might take personal. But if I say, well, I can't do that yet. I need this first. Now you're very productive procrastination for some. I have no doubt.
That's a great insight. I love it. It's productive procrastination. I think there's, and there are people who are hide behind that and never know they're hiding behind it.
I totally agree.
So, but they can tell you the number. I have a friend of mine that tells me like the number of certifications she has after her name, are like 10.
Yeah.
And she goes,
sure.
Well, I'm going to go after this next. And I say, well, why? Yeah. Like you have all this stuff, like just use what you have. Like one more thing is not going to really change the outcome of what you're going after, because you've got 10 things, like 10 certifications.
Yeah.
I've got one, or maybe like not. People say to me, well, what kind of coaching certification you have? I go, well, I spent 23 years coaching young women, and I had to figure out how to make their minds work, because I knew how to make their bodies. Like I knew on the court, what mattered was not necessarily the talent. When we got talent to talent with another team, it was what their mindset was going to win every time. And so many players talked themselves out of it. It just like people do in business, they talk themselves out of it. And so I had to figure out, how do I get these people to believe in themselves? How do I get them to the next level? So, because I wanted to win, right? I like to win, How do I get to the next level? And people say to me, how do you do that? And I was like, well, you have to know who they are. Like that's the first thing. You have to have the conversation to understand what motivates them, what they think about themselves, uncover some of those beliefs that they have that are limiting. Like you have to really know your people. If you don't know your people, they're going to get stuck and they're never going to achieve the next level. So saying that, like Bill, how do you know, what do you do to know your team members better? What kind of steps do you take to know your team members better?
For me, it's about not trying to overthink it. Try to be genuine, try to connect with them. It's as I look at some of the best relationships that I have in business, they've been made from a position of that camaraderie that develops over time in driving success, right? That team that you're referencing. The key interesting difference in business from team sports, you were talking about how important it is to win. I couldn't agree with that more. When you look at it as a team sport, there's a big benefit because there's a score and there's a timer. And so it's really clear who's the winner, who's the loser, shake hands at the end, right? The clock ran out. Business isn't like that. There's no clock necessarily. There's some timers, there's some deadlines, but there's no clock per se. And there's no score. There's some scores. There's a lot of ways to gauge success. But what that does is it creates ambiguity where it creates a lot of places for people to hide, unfortunately, as well, because there's so many different factors, there's so many different elements. And you can say, well, if not for this, then this. There's just all these different things. Whereas, again, in sports, it doesn't matter if it was cloudy or sunny or the crowd was a home game or an away team, or it doesn't matter. It's did you have more points or not at the end? And so in business, this gets back to what's so critical to create clarity around, like, why are we here? How do we measure success? And so how do I weave that into relationships? It's being authentic and being very transparent with people. And I don't allow people to hide behind all these layers of ambiguity. I work to create laser focus on, okay, this is your lane. This is what you are empowered to decide. This is what you are going to be held accountable to, and then expect them to go take measured risks and learn, right? Because at the end of the day, that's all that I can do is to help them to be clear on what they do, how does it make a difference in the business, and then go do that.
Well, I think clarity is a big thing, because when people are confused, they procrastinate. When they're uncertain, they procrastinate. Right? They're going to find 1,000 other things to do rather than doing the thing that's in front of them. And I just was talking to a coaching client of mine. She goes, I've worked here for 2 years. And she goes, literally, I was begging for work. I was begging for direction. I was consistent. And I just gave up. I just gave up. I was just like, well, they're going to pay me for doing nothing. I don't like it because I'm, purpose driven. But I was like, wow, for 2 years. And she goes, finally I had a breakthrough and they recognized what I could do. But for 2 years, can you imagine the money wasted because you haven't given somebody like the right direction, the right pathway, where your goal is, how we're going to measure the goal, can you imagine that in companies?
Those points, Sherry, are exactly right. And I fundamentally believe that the most important thing leaders do is to provide clarity. And I think that's one of the biggest misses that we have in all aspects of society is people don't want to make the decision. Like, and I've seen it, I'm sure you have too, like in the boardrooms and meeting rooms, like to go along, to get along, the people are just comfortable just shaking their head, nod, do what needs to be done, survive another day. And what the world needs is principle-minded people that are bold and willing to do what's right. And you do it in an appropriate way. But people need to be bold. And I think so many people just hide in the shadows. And so like that gets back to the people that are empowered to decide have an obligation. I say it because I believe it. They have an obligation to decide. And when you defer those decisions, it has all these cascading effects out through the organization. And yet so many executives are comfortable being indecisive and not making a decision and avoiding an uncomfortable conversation, which then makes other people have 10 other uncomfortable conversations. The best thing you can do to lead is to provide clarity.
Agreed 100%. And that does come with that decision making. You have to make really hard decisions. And then for people that have the courage, the people that have the confidence, they always know they did the best they could with the information they had at hand at the time. You can't look backwards, because once you've gone up, 3 years from that point, you have more information. So you can't go, well, I should have done this. No, because you have different information. You have to be comfortable with making a decision with the best information you have, and then moving from that point. Well, Bill, this has been phenomenal.
Totally.
You've given so much information, and I love the pieces about clarity. I love the piece about, being decisive. So, because if you're a leader, that is your job. It's your role. It's your responsibility is to make the decisions after you get the information. After you get the information from people and you have the information, you know which way to go. That's why you're leading. People are waiting for you to make the decision. I can just imagine if a coach is at the end of the game, because this is kind of what it likes to me. You're at the end of the game and all the players are looking at you for the call. And you're like, I'm not sure. What do you want to run? And everybody's like, wait, you're the coach. Like, you're the person who's supposed to make we're going to follow you if you make it. But if you're indecisive and you're like, well, maybe we'll run this or maybe we'll do this. They're not going to follow you even when you make a choice. Like, you got to show
them.
You're
absolutely right.
What we're going to do. We're going to make it work. It's going to work. And you go with all the assumption and knowledge and awareness. It's going to end up in the right way. And then they'll follow you. But the same thing happens in business. If you're not certain, if you don't have the clarity, you don't have the boldness and the courage of the conviction to lead people forward, then you've just got a mess laid up behind you.
I completely agree. Couldn't say it better myself. I think people need to embrace the need to be bold. And I think as executives, there needs to be a reckoning with the need to create environments where people feel comfortable to take measured risks and learn. Because the reason why people don't be bold, because they're afraid of blowback, they're afraid of consequence, and there's accountability for actions. That's different. That's not why people don't keep their ideas to themselves, because they're afraid of being accountable. They're afraid of other negative blowback. So we need to make sure that we create environments where people feel empowered to do what they do best.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate all that you do, Sherry. You're helping to create a world where leaders are trying to step up to lead in ways that are more valuable for their organizations and create value. We need more leaders that are principled and bold and willing to make the tough calls.
Absolutely. So, Bill, if I didn't ask you anything, like if there's one thing I could have asked you or one thing that you want people to know before we sign off today, what's one takeaway that you wish that everybody who's listening today would take away?
I would say that embrace different points of view, embrace perspectives, and embrace the reality that when we're all thinking the same, there isn't much thinking taking place. So embrace it, welcome it, foster it. I think in business and the world at large, we need to be open to ideas, and we need to be able to have conversations to solve tough problems. And when we create environments that are conducive to that, we all win. And that's a great thing. When we don't get the best from people and we lose.
I think that the whole thing about, we're not thinking at all, we're all thinking the same way. There's nothing new being created at that moment. What a beautiful thing to say. This has been wonderful. I'm so appreciative of you. Hey, Bill, if somebody had a question, if they had a follow-up question to you, would they find you? Is the best place to find you on LinkedIn?
That would be the best place, would be to find me on LinkedIn. I'm very old school. I'm not actually in anywhere else on social media. So I try to stay focused on getting results.
I hear you on that one. So everybody, hey, thank you for joining us here on this podcast on Olympic Minds, Leadership Beyond Limits. Please share with other people. We really want people to have the opportunity to lead in the best way possible, to move themselves forward and to move their teams forward. So hey, everybody, have a winning day, and we'll see you in the next podcast.